We've kind of been teasing Zod for several seasons now. In the first version, we went with an incarnation where he was a disembodied entity in the Phantom Zone, but we also really wanted to see him in the flesh, and so we needed to think of a way to bring him back where we could see his full figure and his body.
To go back in time and sort of find out how he ended up being that evil guy that we all love to hate.
The perceived betrayal of Zod's best friend really led to him being the villain that he became.
We wanted to bring sort of a history between Zod and Jor-El that we hadn't seen before.
My accomplishments pale in comparison to this man's.
How interesting it would be to find out that Jor-El was very much responsible for Zod turning into the evil guy that we know.
I, Zod, am in your debt.
Never forget that, my friend.
Would he have been a villain anyway, or was it because of what happened between those two friends that Zod became who he became?
My wife, my son.
Zod, there's nothing you can do. Kandor is gone.
We wanted to create a character that you could believe would turn into the Terrence Stamp character from the Donner movies. I think for the most part, the character that has been created on Smallville is the person that comes to Earth in Superman 2.
Zod in Superman 2 is the primary villain, then all of a sudden he just explodes into the psyche of the fan base as being somebody who can finally go toe-to-toe with Superman, somebody who has the same powers, but is a lot more ruthless in using them.
We started to talk about the character, all the characters, as the actors that were going to play them, so that we would kind of, whatever was written, it melded. It wasn't going to be a demand on somebody that they couldn't handle. When we got around to the casting of Zod, we said, you know, who's available? Let's find out who's available in London because we can get the best. And when Terrence Stamp's name came up, right away we both said, Zod, no two ways about it.
I had been out of work for about 8 years. I was actually in an ashram in India. I'd sort of given up the business, really. And the concierge, who must have remembered me when I checked in a year previous, dragged out this old, beaten-up cable. And it was from my long-suffering agent, who I hadn't heard from for years. And he said, would you be prepared to come to London to meet Richard Donner about Superman 1 and 2? You have a couple of scenes with Brando. I thought, my life's about to change, you know?
I thought Terrence Stamp was great in the role of Zod in Superman 2. He really brought this kind of quiet gravitas, and instead of your comic book villain that says, you know, tremble before my power, it was just kneel before me, submit, all right, now set yourself on fire and get out of my way.
The cast of character that existed with him, Ursa and Nan, were all really introduced with part of the film.
What I remember thinking when I was a kid and I saw Superman 2 for the first time was, oh no, there's 3 of them. How is he gonna win? There's 1 of him and 3 of them, and they're evil. He's screwed.
I think Terrence Stamp brought a level of elegance to that role, an attitude, a voice, a personality, a posture. I always say they always stood strong, stood proud, stood tall, and always conveyed a greater size than himself. He always seemed massively big and can meet any threat head on.
The only thing I brought to the character that wasn't in the script was just the appearance of the character. I thought to myself it would be fun to grow a kind of villainous kind of beard, and I thought it would be fun to, you know, slick my hair back so that there was something kind of alien about him.
The way Terrence Stamp portrayed himself, the way he was costumed, made him look much larger than he really was.
So you are a general. And who is your superior?
I think that by bringing Zod into the world of Superman as another Kryptonian, you get a lot of emotional resonances with Superman that you wouldn't from anyone else, because he's looking at a piece of his homeworld gone horribly wrong. Any
good conflict in both writing or visual entertainment, I mean, you need those two people. You need if the adversary wasn't worthy of the hero, you wouldn't care.
Zod started off not as a bad guy. Zod was a hero on Krypton. He was this very forceful military presence.
His motivation is a little bit more of protecting his people. Rather than just ruling, he wants to rule his people, but he wants to help them survive. And our backstory that Dick and I went into a little bit more was that Zod, in the comics, Jor-El discovered that the planet was going to be destroyed, and Zod said, I believe you.
He became a guy who heard where Jor-El was coming from, that the planet was doomed, agreed that the council wasn't listening, but where Jor-El would take the kind of normal, sane approach and say, hey, this is a problem, listen to me. Zod said, let's just kill the council and take power of the planet and then find a solution before any more time goes by.
And Jor-El says, we can't go and take over the council because we won't have the capacity to do anything about it. People won't listen to us, it'll be anarchy. And Zod said, I'm gonna do it anyway. So Jor-El was looking for a real way to save the world and the people, and Zod was looking for, thought violence was the way. It wasn't the way, but he can always have that. If Jor-El had just listened to me, we could have saved Krypton.
When he came out of the Phantom Zone, all that anger towards the council and Jor-El was displaced onto Superman because there was no one else left to take it out on.
We always try to pull from the inspiration from all the different incarnations from the mythology, and while we wanted to be true to this Terrence Stamp kind of version from the Richard Donner films, we also knew that there were a lot of different versions.
There was a Zod in a pocket universe, and there was a Soviet Zod, and there was a this Zod and that Zod, and sort of one by one, it came out that, oh no, that's not really Zod.
The version that we wanted to put on screen was somebody who had a second chance at life and started as a major Zod rather than a general Zod.
He is a clone from the real General Zod, and he didn't even know what happened to General Zod as he lived his life after I come to Earth.
None of you recall that tragic day, because the moment your blood was taken was the last moment you remember of Kandor. But I can assure you, I have not forgotten.
You know, behind every villain, behind every dictator, behind everybody who has problems in this world and who, at the core of them, is so insecure and hates themselves so much that they want to, be seen in this world as somebody who can overtake the world, There's a human element, and I think it's really important to bring that in.
The more you understand a character's motivations, the more you understand what birthed this particular attitude, it either makes him more sympathetic or more of a threat.
Well, the best villain is a villain that you can relate to. There's two kinds of villain. There's the Joker, who's insane and fun to watch, and then there's guys like General Zod who actually believe that the ends justify the means.
And once you understand those motivations, the actions seem a lot clearer, and you buy into what they're doing a lot more.
Something that I thought interesting in the first episode when they brought Zod in is the fact that they started right off the bat with his people turning on him, which I thought was a really interesting thing.
And I find him most fascinating in scenes where I know he's very vulnerable and he's trying very, very hard to keep up a powerful front.
You dare defy me? I have saved the lives of half of the soldiers in this room. I have always been true to my word. And I will find the answers we are looking for, or I will die in the quest.
It first started in the first episode in his scene where he's with Tess in the bedroom, and there's a little bit of a throwdown.
I was told that you would come here and save this planet from its own destruction. But you don't even know what you're doing here, do you?
You see how strong he is, and Tess is kind of terrified of him. But when she's not looking, we see these little moments in his expression that tell us the guy is out to sea without a ship, and there's a part of him that's completely horrified about what he's going through.
And we have to figure out whether or not we're gonna trust each other, and whether or not who is really in power between the two of us.
And it's really fascinating to watch somebody who's that vulnerable, but so crafted at manipulation and has such a sense of what power really means that he can pull it together in moments where he really needs it.
Each one of you, the last sons and daughters of Krypton, are all that is left from our beloved homeland, and I will not allow for your birthright to be denied.
Callum's great. Callum's a really nice guy, and I'm glad that he came to the cast this year. It's fun to have someone different, you know, someone that's done other shows, that knows what it's like to be in that kind of family.
I think Callum Blue does an amazing job playing Zod. It's totally how I would see the character as a younger man, with a little more energy and a little bit more vibrance, as opposed to that cold, calculating Terrence Stamp portrayal. But I could totally see one following into the next very easily.
Rise before Zod. Now, kneel before Zod.
That line, kneel before Zod, is so great. And Terrence Stamp is just cool.
When he says kneel before Zod, it is in no way a suggestion. And it's almost like he doesn't even have to say it. He knows you're gonna do it.
You've seen T-shirts with General Zod on them. Kneel before Zod. You've seen the stickers. You've seen like people know who General Zod is. You don't really see people wearing Lex Luthor shirts. You know, and that says something.
I was in New York last week, one of my days off. I was walking down the street. There's a guy sees me and he says, and he comes up to me and I said, "Kneel before Zod, you bastard," you know.
Kneel before Zod. Lay down on your backs before Zod. Now, using your lower abdominals, raise your legs and hold on a 5 count before Zod. 1 before Zod. 2 before Zod. 3 before Zod.
You know, the gag of Kneel Before Zod, or the gag of Is This Planet Houston, you see in other television shows, things that have nothing to do with comic books, and I think that's fun.
That's magic to me, that I was at the beginning of something, you know.
Kneel before Zod!
I think Kneel Before Zod, to him, started out meaning give me respect because of his position as a major and then a general. And the line between that and bow and serve me got blurred.
He's aloof. He's higher than you. He'll lead you to greatness, but you need to bow first.
So we originally were never going to use the phrase in the premiere. We had a lot of conversations and we thought it would be, at first we wrote just the word kneel, and he was going to say kneel. And so we created kneeling as the Kandorian salute. So what he actually had originally started saying was salute me, and then that got bastardized in his kind of megalomaniac quest for power. So we were just going to say kneel, and then we realized there is no way we can withhold that from the fans. They have to hear him saying kneel before Zod.
Salute. Kneel! Kneel before Zod.
So it made it into the premiere, and when they showed it at Comic-Con, like literally you felt chills because the audience just went crazy. It was awesome.
I know the people who identify with Zod. They're the kind of bad boys, you know.
Well, he's a total badass.
I win! I always win.
Well, Zod's always going to be around. That's the best thing about him, is that he's a perfect foil for Superman.
He knows exactly what he wants, and he's very clear and focused about what he wants, and that always makes a great villain.
I don't know what else I can say about him except don't screw with Zod. Bow to Zod.